Well, I'm gonna go ahead and guess you guys didn't see this one coming. I'm pretty sure I only saw one comment for this game, but that one comment had lots of likes, and after looking into it, it looked extremely intriguing. And that one game is none other than Rocket Knight Adventures for the Sega Genesis. After spending the last few months getting lost on alien planets, not surviving Battletoads, and slowly realizing that old games seem to have been designed by people who genuinely hated sanity, egos, and children, I foolishly assumed that I was prepared for just about anything. Well, let me tell you, I haven't even dipped the entirety of my pinky toe into the waters that is classic gaming. As I said, someone mentioned Rocket Knight Adventures in the comments of a previous video. My response was simple. Now, what in the hell is Rocket Knight, and what adventure is he embarking on? Unlike games such as Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country, Castlevania, or Mega Man X, Rocket Knight Adventures wasn't a game that I had heard discussed endlessly throughout my entire life. Now, that's not saying much because I had never even heard of Earthbound, but that's besides the point. Similar to Crystallis, I had never heard of or even seen a single frame of this game. So I figured it would be cool to throw in some games here and there that maybe deserve a little bit more attention. So naturally, I did what any reasonable guardian would do. I booted it up and immediately got launched across the screen by a rocket-powered possum wielding a sword, and I only had one thought. Hell yeah. Hey there all you beautiful guardians of the glaze. Welcome back to the Milky Donut. If you're new here, this is the Milky Donut. We do all things video games, movies, and pop culture. And if you're not new here, did you change up your skincare routine? Because you're absolutely glowing today. Welcome back to the Regress series, where we play old games, half of which I've never even heard of, just to see how much we've gained, or maybe how much we've lost, in the world of video games. And before we yet again jump back into our video game time travel machine, as always, I would like to mention that I do have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers as quickly as I can. So if you could go ahead and like this video, leave the glaziest of comments, hype it if you can, and subscribe if you think it's worthy of the algorithm. As always, shout out to the subscriber of the week, Mr. Madskill Production, and make sure you stick around to the end for the reveal of the brand new subscriber of the week, because it could very well be you. And with all that nonsense out of the way, let's hop back into our video game time travel machine and go back to the year 1993 to talk about one of the strangest hidden gems I've ever stumbled across. Rocket Knight Adventures released on the Sega Genesis during one of the most competitive periods in gaming history. This was an era dominated by mascots. Mario was everywhere. Sonic the Hedgehog was flying off of store shelves. Every company seemed determined to create its own iconic character. And apparently Konami looked at all of this and said, what if we made a possum with a sword? And then strapped him to a rocket? Well, that's what they did, and the result was Sparkster. And after finally playing Rocket Knight Adventures for the first time 33 years later, I have to admit something. This game is actually incredible. What surprised me most wasn't that the game was good, because every game you guys have recommended to me so far have been bangers, so I pretty much expected that. What did surprise me, however, was how often I found myself thinking, why doesn't anybody talk about this game? It seems like Sparkster would be right up there with Sonic and Mega Man. Well, sometimes the games that people remember the most aren't always the most interesting games. Sometimes they're just the games that sold the most copies. Now, I'm by no means saying that Mega Man and Sonic are not worthy of their success, because they absolutely are. I've only played one Mega Man game so far, and it was peak. I've yet to play a Sonic game, so I don't know there, but Rocket Knight Adventures feels like one of those games that slipped through the cracks despite doing almost every single thing right. One of the things that I've repeatedly talked about recently in this series is how older games often feel like they were built around a very clear vision. Whether you like that vision or not, the developers usually knew exactly what they wanted their game to be. Rocket Knight Adventures immediately gave me that same exact feeling. From the very first level, it feels completely confident in its own identity. It doesn't feel like a game that's trying to copy Mario, or a game that's trying to chase Sonic's success, or any other franchise for that matter. It feels like a game that already knew exactly what it wanted to be. And somehow, more than 30 years later, that confidence still shines through. During my research for this video, as I always do, one thing long-term fans seem to constantly praise about Rocket Knight Adventures is its variety. And after playing it for myself, I completely agree with those opinions. Most platformers find a formula and stick with it. Most things in media do the same exact thing. Shoot, I do it here on the Milky Donut. I found a series that worked for me and I ran with it. Well, Rocket Knight Adventures almost seems to bore itself with its very own ideas, and what I mean by that is every time the game introduces a mechanic, it feels like it immediately starts thinking about the next one. One level has you mastering platforming with your rocket pack, and the next one throws you into giant mech battles, and then you're suddenly flying through the air in what feels like an entirely different genre, and then you're fighting a boss that looks like somebody at Konami was challenged to design the weirdest thing possible and accepted the first draft with enthusiasm. Now, this constant change of pace could have easily come off as feeling inconsistent. Yet the result is a game that never feels repetitive. That level of creativity stands out so much more today. The rocket pack itself is probably the most iconic aspect of the entire game. At first, I thought it was just going to be a simple gimmick. Instead, it ended up becoming one of the most satisfying movement mechanics I've experienced in an old school platformer. I mean, I've only played like 4, but that doesn't matter. Charging up the pack, lining up your launch, and blasting across the screen creates a unique rhythm that constantly changes how you approach obstacles and enemies. The mechanic adds both speed and strategy. You feel powerful when using it, but reckless use can immediately send you directly into danger. And believe me, I tested that theory very extensively. Just to make sure I wasn't giving out false information, of course. Guardian, stop. Of the few platformers I've played up to this point, I honestly can't think of another movement mechanic quite like it. There might be one out there, and I'm sure there is, but that's for you to comment down below. The rocket pack isn't just something Sparkster has, the rocket pack is pretty much the thing that the entire game revolves around. It's the reason exploration feels so different, and the reason combat feels unique. It's the reason Rocket Knight Adventures instantly stands out from virtually every other platformer on the Genesis. According to people online, this is like my second Genesis game, so I have no idea. I could be very wrong, but it's not hard to believe. Another thing that I just have to mention is its controls. I got you, didn't I? You thought I was gonna say atmosphere? Nope, not today. The controls, and just how polished they feel. Mega Man X took me to responsive control school, and I am now an educated man. And I think that's one of the reasons this game has aged so well along with the others. When we talk about older games, we often forgive certain shortcomings because of their age. Especially here on the Milky Donut, because I try to find the positives in every single game, even if they might have some elements that haven't aged too well, such as Nestroid. Thank you for teaching me that term, by the way. Nestroid, Metroidvania. Look at you guys taking me to term school. Well, Rocket Knight Adventures needs no such excuse. Sparkster feels fantastic to control. The movement is responsive, the jumps are precise, combat is simple but effective. My favorite kind of combat. I think it's super clever and cool how you can slide along branches while hanging from your tail, adding even more variety to the movement and the combat. Even during some of the more chaotic sequences, the controls remain dependable. That's one of the highest compliments I can give a game from this era, especially because this specific era in gaming was like peak controls and there was so much competition. The visuals are another area where the game receives near universal praise, and I 110,000% agree. I've myself become quite the fan of the art style of games from the SNES and Genesis era, but the sprite work and the background work here is nothing short of phenomenal. Sparkster is packed with personality despite never saying a single word. The environments are gorgeously colorful and varied. Enemy designs are wild and memorable, and the animation quality is actually ridiculous at times. This game is a feast for the eyes. Now, I really don't know much about the Genesis system or its games, but this has to be some of the best visual work ever produced on the hardware, or any hardware for that matter. I don't think that's an unreasonable claim at all. The game constantly feels energetic and alive, almost like the game itself is having fun, that you're playing it and also having fun, if that makes any sense. It doesn't, but everything moves with high energy, and it all feels so expressive. That's a huge part of why the world remains memorable decades later. The soundtrack also deserves just as much credit. One thing I've learned while playing these older games is that the limitations often created extensive creativity. Developers back then had to find ways to make players feel something using far fewer resources than modern games, and somehow they did it much better, in my opinion. Rocket Knight Adventures music perfectly complements the action, similar to how Mega Man X did for its action. Whether you're launching through the sky, exploring castles, barely escaping danger, or battling giant mechanical monstrosities, the soundtrack consistently elevates the experience, as it should. I think music's one of the most underrated things in all of media. It's all a bit chaotic, but it's completely fitting for the adventure that's unfolding on the screen. And speaking of bosses, this game literally gets off on giving you tough, memorable boss fights. Some of them are massive, some are just straight up ridiculous, and some are pretty dang challenging. But yet again, all of them feel extremely creative. One of my favorite aspects of old games is when developers aren't afraid to build entire gameplay sequences around a single idea. Rocket Knight Adventures embraces that philosophy constantly. The boss fights don't just test your reflexes, many of them introduce entirely new situations and mechanics, and by the end of the game, it genuinely feels like you've experienced dozens of different ideas packed into a relatively short adventure, yet it all meshes together seamlessly. And then, of course, there's Axel Gear, who, by the way, is definitely not a Guardian of the Glaze. But for those of you who are unfamiliar, he's essentially Sparkster's evil rival. You know how every good action hero needs that one guy who just shows up at the perfect time to make your life miserable? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Porky. Well, yeah, that's Axel Gear. Every time he appeared, it felt like the game was saying, "Oh, you're having a good time. That's good. Well, let's see if you still suck at this game." The rival battles ended up being some of my favorite moments in the entire game. Not because they were easy, definitely not, but because they added heaps of personality to the adventure. But even with all of that being said, no game is perfect, even here on the Positive Pastry YouTube channel, The Milky Donut. It's funny because if I made a series called I Only Played New Games for 2 weeks straight and it changed me, you guys would be like, who is this? Is this Milky? This guy is angry. Oh, maybe there's one perfect game. Yep, this one. The difficulty can occasionally spike without much warning and feel a bit jarring at times. Certain sections demand extremely quick reactions, and some boss fights can feel overwhelming during a first playthrough, and I played it on easy mode. I know, you can cook me, it's okay. This video probably wouldn't have happened if I would have played it on hard, because apparently it's like actually hard. Maybe I'll make another video where I play hard mode. There were definitely moments where I got launched directly into danger because my rocket pack and I had completely different plans for survival. And this, my Guardians of the Glaze, is where I say I'm just kidding. These actually are not negatives at all. I got you, didn't I? This is called skill issue. It's just me sucking at the game because it feels fair. When I failed, it was because, guess what? I suck at the game. And that's an important distinction. Perhaps the most beloved aspect of Rocket Knight Adventures is its sense of personality, and there's no shortage of it. This game is weird, wonderfully weird. It's a world filled with armored possums and invading pig armies with giant robots, rocket-powered battles, and enough creative glaze to make you wonder how this even ever made it through a corporate pitch meeting. But that's exactly what makes it so good. I think that's ultimately why Rocket Knight Adventures left such a strong impression on me. I played a lot of older games recently. Some were historically important, like Metroid. Some were groundbreaking, like the Donkey Kong Country games or Chrono Trigger. And some were influential, like A Link to the Past. Rocket Knight Adventures may not have had the same cultural impact as those industry giants, but it possesses something equally valuable: originality. It feels like a game that's made by developers who simply wanted to create something fun, creative, and completely their own. And that's exactly what they accomplished. For somebody like me who had never even heard of this game before starting this journey, that was probably one of the biggest surprises of all. Rocket Knight Adventures isn't simply a forgotten Genesis game. It's an important reminder that some of gaming's best experiences aren't always the ones that dominate every single greatest games list. Sometimes they're the games that are quietly waiting in the background for someone like me to finally discover them over 3 decades later. And to be honest, that's becoming one of my favorite parts of this series. Finding games that I missed, finding games that I never knew existed, and oh boy, there are thousands. But hey, YouTube job security, am I right, boys? Rocket Knight Adventures absolutely falls into that category. It's creative and it's charming, it's challenging, it's extremely visually impressive, it's mechanically unique, and most importantly, it's still incredibly fun to play. It's a game that feels like a hidden gem in the truest sense of the phrase. Not because nobody knows it exists, but because once you play it, you immediately wonder why it isn't mentioned alongside the other greats from the same era. And maybe it is, I don't know anything about this era of gaming, I'm just happy to be talking about it with all of you guys. And with that, we come to the end of our time travel journey. As always, I had an absolute blast playing Rocket Knight Adventures. I went into this one expecting a good platformer and came away with yet another truly amazing experience. But do you prefer old games or new games? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of this, feel free to drop what you'd like to see next in the comments. And if you've already given me a recommendation, don't be afraid to leave repeat comments, because sometimes the comments do get lost, or I just forget the comment and I just need a refresher. So don't be afraid to comment more than once, that's totally okay with me. And that reminds me, it's time to announce the brand new subscriber of the week, and that is none other than Mr. Honest Grifter. You are the new subscriber of the week because I don't think you've ever not commented on a post or a video, constantly giving me recommendations in the comments and engaging with the channel. Thank you for being such a great and loyal Guardian of the Glaze. Don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe to become a Guardian of the Glaze, and I'll see you next time on the Milky Donut.